So just wanted to do a sound check, and I think it might not be on yet. Let me double check. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes?
No, it's
okay. Wonderful. How about online? If there's someone that can't hear me well, please let me know, maybe by writing in the chat. But I wanted to welcome all of us for this, I think it's the third night of the Awakening Joy course as part of a larger class on Buddhist mindfulness. And I'd like to say again this evening, if you haven't been here for the previous two classes, don't worry. It's set up as a complete course in joy, which was a very, very important teaching by the Buddha to awaken joy and lasting happiness. It's sort of the end of the path, the end of suffering in Buddhism. But if you weren't here, you can just take each individual class. If you can come every once in a while, if you're interested in attending to the whole course, there's a few faces here that I know have been here throughout. None is better than the other. Just wanted to always say you're always welcome to attend, obviously, on Wednesday night. So here we are. And one experience that I had was just getting out of my car and looking over to the west and seeing that beautiful sunset. And it just was a natural joy arising in me at that moment. And I just took that moment of mindfulness to just stand and watch the beautiful coloring of the sky. So it's just a blessing to see that, really. And I really felt that sense of awakening joy in that moment. So I thought we could maybe just sit together for a couple of minutes because people are still triggering in, and maybe that's the same for the people online. I've structured the class so that we would normally just have a reflection in the beginning on the theme of awakening joy. There's going to be 10 themes, and we had the theme of intention last week, and we're moving on to the intention of mindfulness, which is a very important aspect actually of awakening joy. And then we're going to have a guided meditation on the theme. But why don't we just sit for a couple minutes in silence together, just to help us all arrive more fully in this place at the temple or this place at home or wherever you are. So I'm just going to ring the bell for that. of you just walked in and thought, oh, finally I can sit here in silence, and now the bell has already rung, don't worry, we're going to have another much larger sit again. And just want to, just as a basics of mindfulness, just say that every moment is really a moment of mindfulness. So even just sitting here and feeling yourself, your body sitting on the cushion or the chair, wherever you are, or what you're sitting on, that's already calling yourself home into mindfulness. And so if it serves your mindfulness in this moment better to have your eyes closed even for the talk and just follow the sound, that's perfectly okay. There's not going to be a test or an evaluation afterwards. So just whatever feels comfortable, just listening to your body, listening to your heart. But I wanted to present, or rather talk about mindfulness and really drive home that it's really the foundation, that mindfulness is really the foundation for well-being, joy, and happiness. And in terms of Buddhism, mindfulness is actually the first of 7 factors of awakening. So the enlightenment or awakening that the Buddha achieved in his lifetime, he said that nothing can happen without mindfulness, that's no matter what, mindfulness, to call oneself into presence, is the most important aspect of any meditation practice, really, and in life as well, in daily life, just to be mindful, to feel yourself fully alive and present to whatever is happening in that particular moment. And the Buddha said that all the other factors that lead ultimately to awakening or enlightenment, including joy, they really all rise and fall in dependence on mindfulness or its absence. And so mindfulness is actually really a quality of the mind that recognizes whatever is present, whatever it is in this moment, even just noticing how you're responding to my voice. Is it aggravating? Is it soothing? What emotions are being stirred up for you by just sitting here in this crowd? Is there any body sensations that you are aware of, any tingling or vibrating, or maybe a stabbing in the knee? That's all included in mindfulness practice. Every aspect of our life can really become something that calls us home into the present moment. And when we add the ingredient of kindness and non-judgment to mindfulness, it becomes an even more powerful experience, and that we can simply allow the heart to open and expand to whatever is here, instead of have it contract. If, for example, you're being triggered, or there's something that you perceive as pain, and you just automatically sort of shrink or sort of close your heart. With mindfulness, if you want to just imagine it, it's like an expansion of the heart, to be mindful and present, and the opposite would be the contraction, the opposite of that experience. And there's a beautiful, beautiful teaching in Buddhism, really one of the most foundational teachings that the Buddha presented were rather the 4 foundations of mindfulness, often referred to as the 4 establishments of mindfulness. And in that teaching, the Buddha speaks of mindfulness, quote, as a direct way or path to help overcome grief and sorrow and realize the highest happiness. And I wanted to add another passage of what the Buddha said in relation to practicing joy and in relation to mindfulness practice, which is, he said that when the factor of, and this is just a sort of an introduction of how he wanted us to practice with joy and bringing mindfulness to it. He said that when the factor of awakening, joy, is present in me, I'm aware that joy is present in me. When joy is not present in me, I'm aware that joy is not present in me. I'm aware when not yet born joy is being born, and when already born joy is perfectly developed. And to me, this really means that the Buddha wants us to develop joy or happiness or well-being, whatever word resonates with you in your psyche, that he wanted us to develop joy and perfect its development. So he wanted us to be well, he wanted us to be happy. And it also seems to me that it means very clearly that mindfulness is the path to a joyful life, and that it arises from the inside and is not dependent on outside conditions. It's something that we can cultivate from within or bring up within. It's a quality of the heart. The Buddha talks about these 4 boundless qualities that we can really awaken inside of us, and one of them is joy. Just to let you know, and I know most of you know this, but the other qualities are loving kindness, compassion, and then also a sense of equanimity or evenness or balance of mind. So joy is a quality in the heart that we can really bring out with practice, and also by taking in the good on the outside of us and really pausing for that and letting it, settle into our being. So there's another sutra in early Buddhism, just like the 4 establishments, the sutra or the teaching on the 4 establishments of mindfulness, that's equally important, and that is called, well, in Pali it's called the Anapanasati Sutta, and this one are the teachings on mindfulness of breathing, where the Buddha really lays out the steps that ultimately lead to the arising of joy through our meditation practice. And I just wanted to highlight the first few to give you a sense of how one might get, so to speak, to joy in a meditation practice. And if you have a meditation practice, you're aware of most of these steps, but the first one would be to simply be mindful that you're breathing in and out as you're sitting down in meditation. And you might even just notice that for a moment. Breathing in, I'm aware that I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm aware that I'm breathing out. And just maybe allowing yourself to stay in this meditative state for a moment. With the second step, the Buddha then says, notice whether the breath is long or short. So breathing in, one can notice whether the breath is relatively short or long. Breathing out, just noticing the length of the breath. And then with the third step, the Buddha asks just to simply, expand the awareness to the whole body. So allowing yourself to feel the whole body sitting here on the cushion, on the chair, wherever you find yourself sitting. And just noticing that. Noticing the breath, and noticing the body. And then with the fourth step on mindful breathing, a sense of calmness can naturally arise in the body simply by bringing awareness to it, bringing this awareness into the body, bringing this awareness onto the breath. And so with the calming of the body, what can ultimately happen is that it leads to the arising of joy and happiness in steps 5 and 6 of the practice. And he didn't speak of this as something, okay, now I'm going to be feeling joy, or no, now I'm going to be feeling happy. It's just something that he says that will naturally arise when one just, softly pays attention to the breath over an extended period of time, and just allows the body to soften and relax, and just adding a sense of loving and kind attention to whatever you're experiencing in this moment, that ultimately joy and happiness can arise through this practice. And then with further steps, just to let you know, and we might eventually have a class on the 16 steps of breathing, it's not part of this course, but ultimately, in further practices on this mindfulness of breathing, is that it will lead to a mind that feels gladdened. It will feel joyful, it feel a sense of gladness just by simply sitting here and breathing. Such a precious gift, especially in this modern and hectic life, that'll ultimately just naturally bring up a sense of gladness in the mind, just by being able to sit here peacefully and breathing. And then also in further along steps on mindfulness of breathing, what will happen is that we can simply notice with mindfulness, how is the mind in this moment? Is it, is it distracted? Is it feeling collected or unified? Is it sleepy? Is it energized? Is it bored? Is it agitated? And you might notice for a moment again, how is your mind in this very moment? It's like turning a mirror onto your mind, just noticing what's present. And so mindfulness is a teaching that says one can simply be aware of whatever is present in this moment, in the body, what's the quality of the breath, what's the quality of the mind. That's all that's required, a soft attention. It's not a hardcore trying, it says, well, let me just see. What's the quality of the mind? What's the quality of the heart? What's the quality of the breath in this moment? And so what it will do for us ultimately in long-term meditation practice is that it opens up a space inside of us, inside of the mind, that can lead to a profound sense of joy and gladness in the heart and in the mind, when we simply learn to accept our inner experience as it is and let go of any kind of wanting or any kind of wishing it to be otherwise. I just really wish I didn't have this stabbing in my knee, or I wish I didn't have this tightness in my chest. And instead, can we just bring a sense of curiosity to whatever is present with a loving and kind attention, and just open up some space in our own inner world. So it's kind of like that mindfulness is really an art of appreciating the moment just as it is. I can't say that often enough. Just appreciating this is how it's manifesting right now. And so we're not waiting, and I think this is the key, we're not waiting for pleasant moods that make us joyful. We can be present for whatever is happening. And so here again, the Buddha's very important teaching actually, he says that instead of leaning into the future or looking back into the past, or maybe even in the present being lost in a fantasy world, that being fearful or planning or so, oh, what's going to happen next, to just settling into this present moment. And so we can just come into the immediacy of the moment. And again, you might just allow yourself to feel that the immediacy of this moment and how it's manifesting in your body, in your heart, and in your mind. So we can just simply learn to appreciate whatever our experience is right now as a sacred moment of life worthy of our attention. So whatever is present is really worthy of our attention and has some wisdom to offer us for our life path if we just look deeply enough and if we're just present enough. So just wanted to offer a little bit more of a mini exercise so it can be more of an experiential practice even while we're talking or while I'm talking. So most of you already have your eyes closed, but if not, or if you don't feel comfortable, maybe just lower your gaze so that you can come inwards a little bit into your own experience. And just take a minute or two to notice everything in your actual experience, to appreciate this moment. Sounds you hear. Your feet touching the ground. Hands resting on your legs or on your lap. Sensing the body breathing and feeling the aliveness inside of your body, beginning with the breath. There's an aliveness, something that connects us to being alive when we're connected with the breath. And maybe noticing other sensations in the body, maybe places where there's tingling or vibrating. maybe a sense of pressure or heat or cold. And even if there's a sense of tightness or stabbing sensation, that can simply be noted and included in our field of mindfulness. Whatever is there. Whatever you can notice in this moment without actually reaching out to look for it, it'll just gently manifest itself. And all of it is really an expression of being alive, and we can be aware of them without judgment. Noticing how it feels to turn your attention to appreciating what's happening in your experience right now. And again, just inviting you to keep your eyes closed if that feels naturally, or opening them again. I just wanted to share a few qualities of mindfulness, in addition to the ones that you might have already detected, obviously, through the first reflections. That the first one is that we can recognize simply what our experience is. That's a quality of mindfulness. So, for example, if we're sad, we can simply note sad. If we're happy, we can simply note happy. So mindfulness simply notices the experience, and it doesn't make it any more dramatic or intense, or pretends that it's not difficult as it is if it feels challenging in this moment. It's simply aware, like I said already a few times, of whatever is happening in this moment. And then when we're experiencing joy, we are aware of it, just like we're aware of sadness or grief or despair. We can just simply note joyful, joyful, or happy, happy. Or when we're hating something, oh, hating something. When we're bored, noting bored, or worried, noting worried. Confused, restless, excited, just throwing out some emotions. Peaceful. Just simply being aware of that is really the first step in Buddhist mindfulness practice. So we're just taking a moment again, just noticing what you sense in your being at this moment. Your mind, your heart, your body, what's present for you. So mindfulness is really a quality that calls us directly into our present experience instead of being lost in thoughts of the past or future, or lost in fantasies, like I said. There's so many regrets that we might experience from the past, or just reviewing what happened today. And there's nothing wrong with it, but just this quality of calling us home into our hearts as it is right now. Instead of being lost in planning, what am I going to do when I leave here? Can we just be present for these moments, these next moments? And another quality of mindfulness is that it teaches us how much it is all changing. Our experience is changing moment by moment. Nothing ever stays the same. One moment you might have felt excited or joyful, and then it shifts again already into something, who knows what, worried or fearful. All of a sudden there's a sense of restlessness. When you're mindful, you can really notice how it shifts moment by moment, and that's a very important teaching in Buddhism, that nothing is ever fixed. This whole body, even that we think of as fixed, this is me, mine, myself. Just if you notice the sensations in your body and just pay attention for 5 minutes, you'll notice just how much it is in flux all the time. And so no matter how terrible it feels inside, or no matter how wonderful it feels, it's all bound to change. And there's really nothing alarming about it or concerning. It's just that's how it is. That's the nature of this experience that we have in this human body and in this human mind. It's constantly changing. Nothing is fixed. And so when we can truly know that all phenomena are impermanent, everything that we experience is truly impermanent, we can come to a place of peace with whatever is happening in this next moment, and the moment after that. So with mindfulness, it really allows us to enjoy this roller coaster of life that we're all constantly experiencing. You know, one moment is joyful, one moment feels sad, then we have some grief come up, and then we feel, it feels peaceful inside. Just noticing that and riding those waves without being sidetracked, and just really being in the experience without any kind of sense of alarm, just bringing a kind attention to it, rather than hoping we will arrive at some fixed, perfect destination. I feel like that's really what the Buddha taught, feeling like we have to make it from A to B. It creates a whole lot of suffering, a whole lot of expectations inside of us. And instead just being in the flow like waves on the ocean, around our breathing, as Jack Kornfield always says. So another quality of mindfulness is that it's really free from judgments, from expectations, from worry. You know, when we can't do anything to change what's happening, we can either wish that life were different and feel miserable and despaired, or we can accept our situation and bring a sense of peace to it, And so Buddha taught that happiness does not, like I said already, does not depend on outside circumstances, but rather on how we meet each moment. So it really almost doesn't matter what's in your life, you know, like with myself. My mom is going through some pretty severe dementia, you know, right now, and like this morning I was trying to help her, you know, overseas this is because she lives in Germany. I was trying to help her. She finally came to this place, yes, I'm selling my car, and I was thinking, yes, you know, she'll be safe, she's not going to drive, so I had it set up through friends and family to help her sell the car, and then she didn't see her car in the garage anymore, and next thing you know, she called the police that it's stolen. And so then that created a lot of concern in this friend that was going to sell her car. Well, does this mean am I now being reported for driving a stolen car? And so then there's more action needed from overseas. And so can I meet this moment by being all frazzled? I can't believe she did that, or now it's going to start all over again. And I definitely have had my moments, just like all of us. And this morning, though, I noticed in my practice, wow, okay, take a deep breath, you know, let's make some new arrangements, some new phone calls. And when we can get to that place, there's really just such a great relief. And believe me, I'm not there all the time, far from it, but just really noticing, oh wow, there can actually be a sense of wellness. You might not want to call it joy, but there can be a sense of wellness and peacefulness in those moments that might otherwise be really frazzling, and frazzling is probably not a word, but you know what I mean. It can be really triggering, and yet we can stay calm even in the eye of a storm, and that's even just a minor storm compared to what most of us are living through in these times. And I just wanted to present that. So if our mind remains steady and calm, or we practice staying steady and calm, joy and happiness will naturally arise. See if you can notice that too sometimes, when maybe there's a moment where you feel like, I would have been really triggered by that in the past, but right now I can just breathe, I can be present to what's here and just allow it to be there and see what naturally arises with it. It might be actually a moment of well-being and joy. I almost want to guarantee it that it will be so. If you're really just open up to it without judgment. And I like to bring in a little bit of neuroscience every time to these awakening joy courses. So just wanted to point out in terms of mindfulness that brain research actually confirms that mindfulness has a positive impact on our level of well-being and happiness. That it apparently triggers these brainwave patterns associated with relaxed alertness, like I spoke of, when we can just relax into our experience with a sense of ease and, mindful attention, that our nervous system actually calms down in that moment. And apparently, neuroscience teaches us that it increases our serotonin levels and activity, and activates positive emotions in our hearts and mind. And that it will also strengthen awareness of our internal state, and counters what has come to be called the fight, flight, freeze response, when our nervous system really gets jacked up in a moment that we're triggered. And instead the mind can stay calm and composed and relaxed, even when we have riding these waves of joy and sorrow. We can have a sense of equanimity in our heart and mind when we practice meditation on a regular basis. And I will probably mention Rick Hanson's name throughout the course. He's a very popular, not just neuroscientist, but also a popular Buddhist teacher in the last 10 years, because he's brought in his art, which is neuroscience, into his Buddhist practice, and has taught us a lot, and wrote a book called Buddha's Brain that I've mentioned before in this course. It's a very worthy book to read. I can highly recommend it. And he emphasizes in this book the practice of what he calls taking in the good. And he says that when we have a positive experience, our brain releases dopamine and other so-called feel-good chemicals. And so Rick Hanson encourages us to know, I'm feeling good in this moment, I'm feeling at ease, I'm feeling well, I'm feeling happy, however you want to label it. And also to be aware of how this feels in the body, to really savor it and learn to marinate it in a moment. I've spoken about this before, to really sort of be on the lookout for a positive experience, not with a sense of strain, or this is my goal, I'm going to be just looking for whatever is positive and wonderful, but when there's a moment of ease and joy, or natural happiness, really to take that in, just as we have to take in all this these negative experiences that bombard us. It's really important to balance them out with a sense of wellness and ease when they arise in our hearts and minds. So he says that keeping mindful attention on a positive feeling is like shining a spotlight on it and vacuuming it into the neural circuitry. And he has a simple formula that I presented last time, but I think it's worth repeating, especially if you haven't been here last time. He says that when you experience something positive, for example, someone is being kind to you or really generous towards you, or you watch a beautiful sunset, as you might have this evening before you came into class, or maybe you just had a nourishing conversation with a friend, really, he says, really take in the good of that experience and let it register for at least 15 seconds. So that's maybe about 3 breaths or 5 breaths, just really taking in, oh, this is feeling really positive, this is really feeling wonderful in my being right now, taking it in. And he says that if you do that 6 times a day for 2 weeks, that you'll probably notice an increased sense of overall happiness and joy. So I just encourage you to try it. Whenever something feels good, really take that in for 15 seconds. Let it resonate at a heart and a bodily level. And see if you can be on the lookout for that a few times a day, and notice if that really shifts your sort of happiness factor inside of you. Just notice, it's just worth an experiment. It's kind of like the Buddha always said, come and see for yourself. He didn't present any of the teachings as a doctrine. He always said, come and see. How does this resonate in your being? And you know all of this, but I just wanted to say that there's so many opportunities to call oneself home in the present, into the present moment. I love walking in Balboa Park, and when I hear the bell tower, the Balboa Park Tower, sometimes it chimes once, then twice, or 3 times, and 4 times. And really, like Thich Nhat Hanh always says, really use a bell as a mindfulness bell, whatever bell it is, be it your phone ringing, or be it the Balboa Park Tower chiming, whatever it is, just pause and just really call yourself back home into your present moment experience. And the same, maybe waiting in a grocery line instead of, I'm really in a hurry. Well, there's nothing you can do right now, so you might as well just call yourself home, take a few deep breaths, and really know that you're standing there and waiting, and just notice, there's a sense of agitation. Let me be mindful of that, whatever it is. Same with taking out the garbage, taking a walk, making the bed, doing the dishes, whatever it is. It can be a moment of mindfulness to really call yourself home. What I often do is when there's these moments of transition, I think those are really great mindfulness opportunities. Let's say you just finished a meeting, you get into the car or you get on the bus, and you just sit there instead of rushing off to the next activity in your mind. Okay, let me just sit here and be. I just finished this activity. Let me just be with this and let myself be called home before you rush off to already be, ahead in your mind of what's going to happen next. There's so many opportunities to call oneself back home. And as much as you can, I know this is very hard to do in this modern world, but as much as you can, just try to do one activity at a time instead of this constant multitasking where we can really be not mindful for anything when we do so many things all at once. Even I try to do that at least with one meal a day, to really sit there with this bowl of food and really just eat the food without reading a paper or looking at a device or even talking to someone, to make it a really nourishing experience. To just be there for that one activity is a beautiful opportunity for mindfulness practice. And then also just a couple more things before the meditation, to really stay connected with your intention to incline your mind towards well-being and joy. And so really allow yourself to be present to activity and to allow joy to naturally arise inside of you. And then when the joy is present or the sense of well-being is present, to really allow yourself to feel it for a few moments. To offer guided meditation practice just on simple mindfulness this evening. So beginning by inviting yourself to sit in a way that feels comfortable and at ease. And at the same time, let there be a sense of alertness in your posture. Maybe sitting up a little bit taller through your spine, if you can. Allowing your mind and body to settle. And if it's comfortable, a lot of you have already done this, close your eyes or have a soft gaze downwards. And perhaps inviting yourself to take a few deep and long breaths, just to release whatever you're carrying emotionally, whatever tension you might be carrying in the body, just releasing that with the out breaths. Allowing yourself to settle onto your seat or cushion. The eyes and facial muscles soft. Releasing the jaw, the neck. Inviting a sense of relaxation and softness into the shoulders. Arms and hands resting easily. And see if you can feel the weight of your body on the cushion. how you can feel fully supported by the seat beneath you, the earth beneath you, just as you are. And let the belly be soft and the breath natural, just flowing in and out now in its own rhythms, whatever they are, however it manifests. Finding a sense of softness through the heart center. And just as an invitation to let whatever arise, whatever is arising, to let it arise in the spirit of kindness and compassion. This is what is here now. And then you can also be aware of your breathing cycle, simply noticing how the breath breathes itself. Maybe finding a place in the body where the mind can naturally rest on the breath. Perhaps the rise and fall of the belly or chest. Tingling, swirling in the back of the throat. Coolness in the nostrils. Whatever you sense, where you sense the breath most easily, let your mind settle there. Relaxing with each breath. Inviting a sense of calm and ease. Breathing in, breathing out. And as you sense each breath, see if you can let all the other experiences, the sounds, the thoughts, the feelings, sensations, simply rise and fall like waves of the ocean around the breathing. Bringing a kind and gentle attention to whatever is present. And whenever you notice that the attention has moved away from the breath, just very gently guide it back. Kind of like training a puppy, as Jack Kornfield always says. Sit, stay, over and over again, calling yourself back into the presence, onto the breath. Just noticing sensations of breathing in your body. Allowing the breath to be naturally long or short, deep or shallow. Breath simply expressing itself. This breath, easy, calm, resting in the present as the body breathes itself. And as you continue to sense the breath with a mindful, loving awareness, and let these waves of experience, the sounds and sensations, thoughts and feelings, rise and fall like waves of the ocean around the breathing. Every once in a while there might be an experience that will get quite strong and that might even pull away your attention from the breath. And so now you can open up the meditation when the strong wave arises and Just temporarily let go of the breath as the focus of attention. And then turning towards the experience, kind of like bowing to it. You can simply name it. Itching, tingling, sadness, joy, happiness, fear, longing, or thinking, planning, remembering. And as you name the wave, let yourself sense it move through the body and mind, naming it gently. Sad, sad, excited, excited. After a while, the wave will likely diminish, arising and passing, appearing out of emptiness and vanishing. And so then you return back to the breath, steady and calm. This breath, until another wave of experience might arise. So in this practice, you become a field of loving awareness. You are the awareness. Noticing the breath, steadying the attention with it, and acknowledging the waves of experience when they arise, when they're strong, just as you notice the breath coming and going. And keeping it simple, this breath, calm and steady. Or this experience, acknowledging it, letting it rise and be felt. And when it's time, seeing it pass away. You are the mindful, loving awareness itself, resting in it, relaxing into it. Becoming quiet and still and vast. And just allowing everything to come and go as it will. As we sit for a few more minutes in meditation together. Just a few words from the Buddha as we end the meditation. Do not think of the past and do not long for the future. Matters of the past have already ceased, and the future has not yet come. In the present moment, one should attend with mindfulness to the lack of stability of whatever phenomena there are. The wise will awaken in this way. So we have some time for questions or comments. If anything came up for you in the practice this hour that you'd like to share. There's an invitation, of course, to participate online as well. If you'd like to write a question in the chat, you are always welcome. But just maybe taking a moment, is there anything alive inside of you that wants to be shared? We can all learn from each other. We all have wisdom to share and to offer one another. So. Yes.
In the middle of the meditation, I got this piercing pain in my low back. And I did what you said. I just acknowledged it. Oh, pain in my back. Mm. And it dissolved. It worked. It was fascinating. Mm-hmm. You know, other times I would have gotten agitated and focused on it. Mm-hmm. I love that experience.
So there was sort of an invitation, just opening up the experience that you labeled pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it can be helpful also to even maybe look a little deeper, like when you say pain, what was actually the sensation? Was it a stabbing or vibrating or a pressure, just to bring a sense of curiosity to the practice, because often what we label as pain, that's how it actually becomes fixed and stagnant. Oh, pain. It's like it's an entity, and it could just be when you just really look, what is it actually that I label as pain? Is it a swirling sensation, a vibrating or circling? What is it? A tingling, a pressure? And it just is a reminder that way that it's never anything fixed. Now it might feel like for people with chronic pain that it is an entity. However, we can always add a curious kind attention to it as best as can, and it seems like you did that.
Yeah.
And also to remember not to have the expectation, whenever I do this now, it's just going to go away, because then it's setting yourself up for sort of maybe a more suffering when you have this expectation, okay, next time I do this, I'm just going to hold space for it. But just to know, it can shift, it can be different every time. But I'm glad that you had that experience. It sounds wonderful. It's nice to just really take that in. Oh yeah, you can just be with the experience in that way. It will open something up that invites it to release. So yeah, it's almost like it's welcome to be there too, right? And you just say, oh, let me feel this. So yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That was a really nice meditation. I've never done the naming before. I mean, I've heard about it, but it seemed, I always thought in my mind, like, well, it's going to take me out of the flow of the meditation. But by naming it, it actually kept me in that mindful state longer. Mm-hmm. And so I just felt I feel more relaxed now. After, having that experience of naming. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting, because then without the naming, then the story goes on a little bit longer. But then when it's named, it's like then you go back to just being in the moment. So that was good.
Yeah. It takes it sort of out of the head into the body, and just noticing with curiosity what's there. And to me, I've lately recognized it, like I said earlier, really like a sense of expansion of the heart versus a contraction. When I go into the story, it all contracts around the story. And when I name it, it's, oh, this is present now. So there's sort of an opening up, a space is created that allows it to be there. And then there can be a softening in the body, and it sounds like that's what you might have experienced. And I think it's even been shown with research that when we name something, it actually softens the experience. You know, people might think, oh, if I'm really acknowledging there's fear, it's going to get so much bigger, but apparently it's really the opposite. And I think we can often experience it in meditation, that it just really calms something down just by simply allowing space for it to be present. So that's wonderful. I'm glad you had that experience. Yeah. Yes, Stephen.
I really appreciated when you were talking about being in the moment, and that could be the bells from Noble Park. And I tried to be mindful, and there's the Plum Village app, and you can actually set up for a meditation reminder, or to be in the moment, and it'll chime on the hour. And so I set that up, and I'm usually so diligent with that, and I set myself up for failure because I set it up for several times during the day, and I kept missing it, and I was just kind of going all in. And listening to you tonight, it allowed me to realize that I had this wonderful dog. He passed away 2 years ago, and he was we had just a soul contract with him. And before he passed, we had this, he was going to remind me, whenever there were bunnies, whenever I see wild bunnies, that was his presence in my life still. And whenever I see those now, I stop in those moments and reflect and take a moment to think about him, or just whatever in that moment. So it doesn't need to be an act. It can be just as simple as that, to bring me back to the present moment. So that helped me tonight to not beat myself up and not be so clinical, and be open to different ways to bring myself back to the moment.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's really true that the key is sort of the softening, not this judgment, like if I'm not mindful, or if I've set my device to remind me with a mindfulness bell and then I'm not catching it or whatever, and then there's the judgment. The biggest part of Buddhist mindfulness really is this non-judgmental attention. And then did you say your dog before he passed? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So your dog became your mindfulness bell, really to call you, oh, these are cherished, moments to be really cherished, right? Because you don't know how long your dog is still going to be around. That's a wonderful mindfulness bell. Your dog was your teacher to call you back into the present moment. It's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. Thanks. Yeah. Yes?
Can you talk about the importance of meditating in Sangha as opposed to meditating alone?
I find it, community, for one, community, I feel especially in these times that we're going through really challenging times in the world, and a lot of our lives have become more stressful, that it feels, at least to me, really important to practice in community and have that sense, okay, there's a group of people here supporting one another, even in silence. I find that very powerfully the times that I've gone on a meditation retreat that's silent, but there's a group of people practicing together, sitting together in meditation, and it just feels very powerfully supportive. And just even coming here for an hour, some of you might have felt this, I really feel like I'm not alone meditating. I've always noticed when I practice in community that the length of time that I can meditate usually gets extended, because I feel, okay, I'm not the only one, and it might sometimes be more challenging. But then other times, I don't know about you all, but I have a daily sitting practice. I sit on my own, and that also feels equally nourishing, where it maybe is easier to go more deeply inside, and if I'm sitting by myself, then maybe still being somewhat, cognizant about other people sitting with me. So I think it just depends also. I've gone through phases where I've always sat in community at a temple, and then there's been times where I never went to a temple and I'm just sitting by myself. So I think it also very much depends on where you're at in life, in your current circumstance, of what's more appealing. So just listening. There's really not one is better than the other. It's just maybe today it's better to sit in community, and tomorrow it feels right to sit alone. So it's just listening to what feels right to you. So,
Well, it was very joyful to sit with all the
wonderful.
things.
That's wonderful, thank you. Any other question? Just maybe one more question. I know we're already a little bit over. I apologize. But let's see some questions online. Yes.
Is there anything else? So when you discussed naming, I recognize that I can really benefit from practicing naming more emotions. And perhaps that's not something that I was very well versed in as growing up. And so I'm curious whether there's any kind of advice that you might have around like the art of naming things, because I feel like it can be really poetic too.
Do you want to say more about the poetic part and give an example of that? And you're just trying to see how to bring that out more in your consciousness, the naming part maybe in more creative ways for yourself?
I mentioned that because in my experience just now meditating, the contraction that I was able to meet and perhaps soften a bit was more shame-based. And so when I actually felt some relief from meditating on that, I remembered just some poetry from many years ago that I had written. So I guess, like, what is it like for, I'm curious, like, what is it like for you throughout the day to name things?
Well, when something just becomes strong in myself that I'm aware of, like an emotion, like a deep emotion, it could be joy or it could be grief, I just really practice with allowing it to be there. And sometimes there might be an image that arises, or maybe a color, something comes to mind from a past experience maybe that's being called into the present moment. Sometimes I write about it, that often helps me process an emotion, a deep emotion that's there. For me, oftentimes it's writing or sharing it with someone else that sort of highlights the experience more to help me process it more. But I feel like it's also important not to make it something, too complicated, like it's said in the meditation. Just keep it simple, just naming it. Or even if it feels overwhelming to name something where you're feeling like, what am I supposed to do? It's just okay to just come back to the breath and just sensing the emotion in the body. So that doesn't always have to be a naming. There can just be a sensing. This is what this feels like, so it doesn't become overly complicated. So just sort of playing with it. And when you're feeling, oh my God, I don't, what am I supposed to do? Then just come back to the breath. And when it feels like, oh wow, I'm really in touch with a sense of shame, let me feel curious about it. Where do I actually sense it in the body? How does it manifest in the body? Is there a story attached to it? But be careful though, then you could be taken out of the experience and going off into a story, but just be curious about, where you feel it, what you sense, and maybe afterwards write about it if you feel like something remains unresolved, that's fine too. So just sort of noticing different ways. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah, okay, wonderful. So, I just want to say one more thing and then we're done, Stephen, because I know you want to come up and it's over time. I'm teaching this whole course as a practicum course also for another Buddhist mindfulness training that I'm attending. So if any of you have been coming to the classes and feel like you're probably likely to come to all the classes, I would really appreciate if you haven't done so. I have this little paper, if you want to put your name and email. I've been given the permission of the owner of the temple or founder of the temple, because I would love to get your evaluation or a little survey at the end of the 10 weeks. So if you feel like you're coming all the time, it would be great to have your name added to it. So anyway, thank you. Yes?
Can we still do that if, like, let's say I watched the other recordings?
Absolutely, yeah, you don't have to be live. It can be someone online, so it's perfect, yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, I think it's enough said already. We're way over time, and Stephen is coming up. Thank you for your patience, and just thanks for everyone online too. I hope you have a safe ride. And if you need to leave now, you feel free anytime, obviously at 8 and beyond.